Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, as you see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Well, we'll be relaxing as per usual. Late night episode, had a D&D session. Mostly a combat focused one. It was the other half, I suppose, of a tournament. It was going on with the other group. This one was also, ended up being quite one-sided, but, I guess I kind of ended up expecting it more because this group is not as built for combat. And it was an incredibly, all or nothing sort of strategy the other enemy used. But hold on. Good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:59 p.m. on Friday, December 6th, 2024. They used a very all or nothing strategy, which is basically a hyper carry strategy. Where they had a berserker barbarian who was hasted by the wizard, and there was a bit of disruption done by the sorcerer, and the paladin gave them bless, and then I promptly forgot to use bless, I think, every single time it came up, and it ended up working actually incredibly well because it was, as I say, these strategies are very feast or famine. Most of these play combat are because they're so explosive. Like, you make one mistake and then you essentially die because you don't have enough HP. Barbarians, I think, actually, now I'm looking at it, pretty damn good at player versus player combat, being able to half physical quote damage and having just a ridiculously high health pool. Because the wizard had 40 HP or something, which meant that he could have died in just one attack if it wasn't careful. But that's okay. If anything, it's kind of better this way. The sort of tournament arc, which is only meant to just be a side thing. It's not actually meant to be that major a thing, but nonetheless, as D&D, and then we'll have 2 more sessions next week, and then it'll be on a little bit of break for a while, just over the holidays. Because certainly doing 2 sessions, I think, every single week for almost the entire year now, it's certainly been a lot. While it's both fun and rewarding, it can also be quite challenging at times. Hence why, in fact, I'm recording this Animal Crossing episode at midnight. And it's why I end up whispering in so many of these videos, is because it's I'm recording super late, and I'm I don't want to be incredibly loud past this sort of time. But nonetheless, what are we going to talk about today? I don't know. I was going to talk about the Pokemon development stuff, but I don't know. I feel like I'm a bit too tired for that right now. So we'll talk about something, because I'm I've got to engage my brain into game design analysis mode, which is not something I feel like doing at the moment. Xeno Zone Zero has had their next patch preview. I've not had the chance to look at it, although apparently there's some big news where characters being released for free, which is interesting. Exciting, and because I'm trying to think how to put this. It's not a character that I was super into coming out, so it's sort of just oh, you're a free character, cool. I'm not going to complain about it or anything like that. But I wonder what that's like, because I'm not sure. I'm trying to think how to put this, because essentially Honkai Star Rail and Xeno Zone Zero, both games by the same company. Honkai Star Rail, about a year and a bit ago, released a character called Dr. Ratio for free. You could pick him up for free if you played literally at any point during that promotion, and it was awesome, especially at that time, because I was I'm kind of tempted to pick up Dr. Ratio. He seems like a fun character. There's too many other characters either side of him that I want, so I was maybe I'll try for a few pulls, and then if I get him, I do, and I don't. And then they announced it as a surprise, that he was being given away for free, and I was just whoa. I remember during a live stream, 2 times I can think of during this sort of direct live stream, where I had an audible reaction to something. That one of course being Dr. Ratio, the other one being the announcement of Animal Crossing New Horizons. I still remember it so clearly in my mind, of a fake out, or it was oh, Isabel's coming to Smash, and I was wow, that's so cool. Not exactly what I wanted, but I'm still appreciative of another way, more Animal Crossing rep in Smash Bros. And then the follow on of Tom Nook being there and announcing New Horizons actually made me, no joke, I think I actually stood up from my seat. I'm not sure if I jumped up from my seat, but that's perhaps a bit too energetic for me. But it was genuinely very exciting. Now, the interesting thing with this one, and this is Xeno Zone Zero, is I feel like there's been significantly less fanfare about it. Maybe because ZZZ is a bit of a smaller game compared to Honkai Star Rail. Like Honkai Star Rail, I feel like came in swinging with how many people ended up picking it up. But also, I think part of it is maybe that Haramasa is not as hyped a character, or maybe he is. I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe my own personal interest in the character is influencing it to the extent where I'm just like, oh, you know, maybe because I'm not as hyped for this character, it doesn't feel like there's as much hype around this character. I'm not sure, but it's a very sort of interesting situation must be put in, you know, when your sibling game essentially releases a character for free, because now there's like an external pressure to do so. Like, people want it for Genshin, but you know, Genshin's like almost too big to fail at this point. They don't have that pressure necessarily anymore. But with Haramasa, I was just like, whoa, that's kind of cool. But I don't know. It's interesting how different I feel about it. You know, and of course I'm appreciative at the same time. Would I have appreciated it more if it was a different character? Yeah, probably. But I still think it's kind of cool, because I wouldn't have pulled for his character anyway. So getting him for free, maybe I really enjoy him. You know, we've seen him a little bit in the story, as he seems like a pretty chill guy. It definitely seems like the funniest of a bunch of Section 6, but I don't know. I'm just surprised because when Star Rail announced it, there was so many posts on the subreddit just being like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But this time it's not the case. I think also maybe it's because, as I understand it, this one was leaked, essentially, that he was being given away for free. But for Dr. Ratio, it genuinely came out of nowhere, that no one was expecting it. So everyone got to ride the hype wave together, which is a very interesting thing when it comes to leaks in general. I guess this is where we're going conversationally, is the fact that with content leaking, it's, I guess, probably a bad thing on the whole, right? For content to be leaked. Obviously, because I think one of the major things is if things get leaked and they're like misrepresentative of the final product, that can be a very bad deficit, right? Like, you see something, you know, being leaked, and it's like, let's say it's like a new skin line in League of Legends, and people just have an immediate negative reaction because it's still work in progress. It's still being developed. People are still sort of trying to feel out exactly design-wise where it wants to go, where it needs to go. But maybe that was an early iteration. Maybe they focused, tested that, and then it didn't get the reaction they wanted, so they like made a new iteration. I don't know. But it sort of sets you up, or sets a general viewer up for the incorrect mindset, maybe. It sort of like preempts your own opinions about it when it fully gets released. Because I feel like usually I'm like okay with leaks, and I am sort of like in general from like the spoiler perspective, as long as the leaks, you know, end up being marked and they're not just like posted everywhere. I think that's kind of more of a consequence of the ubiquity of social media, more so, and like virality, more so than the existence of leaks in general. I'm trying to think how to phrase what I wanted to say though, because I feel like leaks, at least the only leaks I really pay attention to are ones tied to these gacha games I play, and I'm totally okay with that, because that means the only ones I'm interested in are like character banner release schedules. I somewhat care about the mechanics of a game and the aesthetics, but I don't care about like I don't want to know the story leaks or anything like that. Like, I'm like, I could discover that at the same time, at the time it actually gets released. But with characters, at least, you know, because you have limited currency in these games, it's nice to be able to know who you can save up for. But it's interesting because I certainly do have a much more nonchalant opinion about spoilers, right? Like I said it before, that I feel like me knowing a spoiler doesn't often affect how I engage with a story. Certainly I think there's been times, but most of the time I feel like I can't think of a time where I learned about a spoiler and I was like, this ruined the story for me, or like this made it worse. Because I thought I was really crazy for thinking this. I felt like not a lot of times, and most of the times it made it rather neutral, but sometimes it made it better, as it either I got the wrong conception about what was going to happen in the story and it still managed to get one over me, or I got more curious about how it would come to that in the first place. which made it like an interesting dynamic. And I suppose perhaps the way to think about it is not so much that it's that it changes the way you engage with a media property, right? It changes the way you think about it, rather than what's going to happen is how does it come to that. And if how to come to that is less interesting than what does happen, you probably dislike spoilers, and I think that's fair. But it's interesting how leaks affects that, because I guess with leaks I'm not thinking of it from a spoiler perspective as much. With leaks it's more like a content, like it's almost like on a meta perspective of what's going to be contained in it. And I'm talking about this on the concept of video games, I think, more so than other media properties, because leaks of a movie is basically the same as spoilers for a movie, right? There is a conflation of overlap there. But with games, at least, or things which have a certain ongoing service model, and leaks at least gives you sort of like a peek into the future, a teaser of things to come. So I guess that's why leaks feel a bit different there, but also feel better and worse in different situations. I've never really thought about that. Because I guess with leaks, I only engage with them on like a gaming sense, because I'm excited to know what is happening or what is upcoming, because that is the major draw of this sort of like service model, right? Is that it's going to have continuous updates, but one deficit is of course that you don't know what updates might be coming. But with like a movie or the TV show, spoiler, it's not a service model. It's like a boom, there, it's done. It's like a fixed amount which is being generated and created and then released. It feels like leaks don't make sense there, because the only use I have for it is essentially peer into the future of like what future content is going to look like. It doesn't make sense for a TV or a movie, because that future content, one, doesn't exist, and the content which is there is not going to change. It's immutable. So yeah, I don't know. Content leaks is just very, very interesting to think about from this perspective, about how differently I think about them for the different media properties. Like, I wonder if there was something like a TV show which was just continuously ongoing, would I think the same thing I think about video game leaks with a TV one? I don't know, because then I feel like it's more of like a confluence of a load of different things for video games coming together, which ends up resulting in this sort of mindset. I feel like it's difficult to put into words, because it's the concept of it being like a service model, interactive, limited currency, I suppose. So like investment, or what you invest in matters as a consumer. I mean, I guess it generally does as well, but like the concept of a media property all sort of coming together, like asterisk pattern as a star, to make it such that leaks are a yay and no leaks are no for this specific media property and situation. Isn't that interesting? I don't know, maybe you don't find that interesting. I find it interesting to think about, because it's like, why is my mind, these are fundamentally very similar things, so why is my mind treating them as such different aspects or possibilities? And the answer might be that's not the case at all. Maybe it's something completely different. I don't know. But even so, yeah. I guess the sad part about these sort of things is that when cool moments like this happen, like things which sort of break the mold, things which really change things up, getting leaked in advance makes it sort of like lessen the impact, right? Because now, instead of having everyone being hyped up, boom, immediately together at one point, is you have like a sort of wave of hype which goes up and down and sort of meanders about, which is not as cool as that concentrated one spike of hype moment, in my opinion. You might think differently. I guess that probably also depends on how you might engage with the community more. If you're much more sort of like a steady and constant, you might want that steady, constant stream. But if, I don't know, I guess my perspective always comes from media properties that maybe I don't engage in with as much. So seeing a like big spike of something happening is pretty cool. But it must be frustrating, I suppose, as a business or like a creator, not even a business, a creator in general, to have things like this leak and just be like, what am I going to do about it? Well, you know, it's not like you can unleak it, which is like the main thing, isn't it? Right, you'd love to do if you could just travel back in time and make sure word doesn't get out. But even with things like NDAs and contracts and like these vows of silence, I suppose, to prevent things from being spread, definitely is like quite the uphill battle, isn't it? To do so, it's challenging, to say the least, to be able to suppress anything. I mean, like, you know, I forget what it's called, but there's like a phenomenon which is based around this sort of concept that if you start, my mind just like vanished as I was speaking. I think I was literally on autopilot. I can't remember what I was speaking about. Leaks. There was a phenomenon and I don't remember what I was going to say. That was so weird. I legit forgot what I was saying in the middle of a sentence because my mind like erased it. Okay, well hopefully what I was saying wasn't that important, but I know I was talking about leaks in general. It's just, I don't know. Are leaks good? Are leaks bad? I think on the whole, I guess they are kind of bad. It's just this one specific situation of gacha gaming and being able to plan for the future, it makes it good. But on the whole, I guess I do think leaks are bad, because I think part of the biggest shame from it is the fact that now the content is being ingested in a way not intended by the original creator. You know, like leak scans of, like, say, a story beat or something in like a manga or like a story in general. I think it's a shame that gets taken out of context. People make their own conceptions about it and rate it on as good or bad without knowing anything about it, because some people can be very sort of like snap judgment on things, whether for good or for worse, to be honest. But that sort of thing was sad because, you know, the original artist and creator, I'm sure, had a vision of how it's going to be, of how it's going to turn out, and how it was going to be like taken in and set everything up perfectly around it to be able to accompany it and lift it up, right? A lot of people's work would probably go into it to do the same or similar thing. But yeah, at the same time, I guess knowing what's happening, what's ahead in these sort of genres, when knowing what's ahead is useful, unsurprisingly. Yeah, I don't know. I guess most of the time I don't really participate in these. It's literally only Genshin, Honkai, and Xenosaga Zero, and it's literally I look at them and be like, who's the next character? What's a kit like? Okay, that's it. Now I can rest easy. Because it's very different, I suppose, seeing the kit of a character and actually being able to use and engage with them in the game. But anywho, I'm going to wrap this episode up here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.